The 5 Master Strikes, or Meisterhau from the German longsword fencing tradition, all can be used as simple attacks, but they also can be so much more. The first Master Strike is the Zornhow, and it is a downward diagonal cut starting from your right or left. And this, by itself, is an effective attack. But you start to see the real beauty behind the Master Strikes when you cut into an incoming attack. In doing so, you not only apply a lethal threat to your opponent, but you also counter their attack with the same motion. And all of the Master Strikes do this by controlling the center line. The Zornhow is the easiest Master Strike to do in Half Sword, and you guys have probably been doing it without even realizing it. So there's not a lot of explaining I need to do to show you how to use this technique, but one tip I can give you is to move to the left or to the right when you're attacking. Oh, and by the way, when I'm wearing red, this thing above my head is to show my mouse movements. The Zornhow can also be used to block off lines of attack. Say you notice that your opponent looks like he's gonna throw a Zornhow from his left side. So what you can do is do a Zornhow of your own from the left side, stepping into danger knowing that his Zornhow is blocked off. Now, before we move on to the next Master Strike, there is a variation of the Zornhow called the Zornort, which is exactly the same as a Zornhow, except it ends in a stab rather than a cut. Because you either miss the opponent and are stabbing from the bind to hit them, or you're simply following up your initial attack. To perform a Zornort in Half Sword is very easy. All we're going to do is perform a Zornhow while entering our alt stab mode. And from there, you can perform a stab to complete the attack. The second Master Strike is the Crumpow, which is the only Master Strike technically impossible in Half Sword, because it's a windshield wiper-like motion that requires you to put your thumb on the guard, and that's just something we're not able to do. But if you sweep your sword to the side and parry then riposte, it can look pretty similar to Crumpow, and this works really well against cuts from above and stabs. The third Master Strike is the Zverko, which is a high horizontal cut, which seems like it should be impossible to do in Half Sword given our range of motion, and the fact that to do a proper Zverko, you need to thumb the guard just like you do with Crumpow. But because of a cool little sword mechanic that I discovered, we're able to do one. But you can only do one, unlike in real life where you can chain them together. The Zverko is great at countering overheads, because it blocks off their line of attack while allowing you to hit the side of their head. It also has a lot of other uses that we just can't utilize in Half Sword, like being able to break the guard Von Tag, but that's not something we need to worry about until we actually get to fight other people. Now, to do a Zverko, we can be in one of two positions: the resting position without clicking on our mouse, or with the sword above our head and slightly to the right. To perform a Zverko from our resting position, we're going to raise the sword above our head quickly and slightly to the right. Then we're going to click one more time and hold, and you'll perform a Zverko. If you're starting with the sword above your head, the only thing you need to do is double click. Note, the farther right your sword is, the more of an angle your attack will have. The fourth Master Strike is the Shidal, and it is by far the hardest one to perform in Half Sword consistently. It's also a bit finicky, but I think that works to our advantage. The Shidal starts from either of your shoulders, and then transitions to the other side, binding against your opponent's blade, while hitting them with the short edge of your sword. Oh, and the short edge of the sword is the back edge, or the one mainly facing you most of the time. But in Half Sword, the moment where you're able to hit them with the short edge of your sword doesn't last very long, because it's an angle that you're not meant to attack from, and your character can't stay in that position for very long. But that just means you gain more speed and momentum coming out of that position because your character helps you, which makes for some really cool follow-up attacks. And I noticed that this attack works really well on bots in this game, because they're not ready for how fast the sword whips back around after you try to perform a Shidal even if you miss. One tip I have for you guys is that it's easier to aim the Shidal if they're really close. Now to perform a Shidal, you're going to start with the sword above your right or left shoulder, but you want it to be pointing at the camera. You don't want it too high or too low, or it won't work right. You want to position your sword so that it almost disappears. Then you want to move your sword up into the left, into your left aux guard. And if you don't know how to get into that guard, you're going to want to practice and figure out where to position your mouse. Now to perform the attack, we're going to flick our mouse when we do this motion, but not too quickly. It does take some practice, but I think it's well worth it because this is one of the most fun and cool looking master strikes that you can use in Half Sword. And once you get used to it, you should be able to perform it very consistently. And the last master strike is the Shidal, which is a high vertical cut to the opponent's head. And it's primarily used for breaking low guards. Because your hands are so high, it keeps your hands as safe as they possibly can be from low attacks. And when your arms are extended this way, it offers you the greatest potential for range. The Shidal is a very fast attack that splits the center line, giving your opponent very few options to choose from. And even if your opponent does manage to parry and counterattack, you can easily parry and end with a thrust. In Half Sword, the Shidal is great at going over the top of shields and bucklers, catching your opponents off guard. The Shidal works the exact same way as the Zverko in Half Sword, but the only difference is when we have the sword above our heads, that we keep the sword very centered and not to the right, maybe even a bit to the left to be safe. Otherwise, you'll perform a Zverko when attacking. But there is one more way to perform a Shidal if you don't like double clicking. And that is by bringing your mouse down in a snapping motion and then lifting up a bit so that you don't continue to follow through with the attack. Which can be very useful at times, but I prefer the other method just because I think it looks better and it sets you up for a stab. Now you know all the 5 master strikes and how to perform them in Half Sword. I hope I've been helpful in leveling up your skill as a swordsman, and I wish you the best of luck slaying the greatest of foes.